Hey YouTube, this is Adam here. I'm going to be doing a few projects that are going to be interrelated over the next few months here, and I thought I'd do a little bit of an explanation of what's going on. I moved into a new house. I'm in a temporary office right now while I'm remodeling what will be my office eventually over above the garage. It's in pretty rough shape. I'm going to be gutting it and rebuilding it kind of to my own specifications. I'm going to be building a server closet as well, getting a server rack. Right now, all of my FreeNAS machines, my pfSense domain controller, all those kind of machines are in commercial, consumer grade cases. You've seen my pfSense, and I think, yeah, you've seen my FreeNAS machines and stuff too. The FreeNAS machines are in ATX cases. I want to get everything rack mounted, but it's going to cost a lot of money to buy all the new cases, the rack, get everything remodeled, get some sort of cooling system because there's a closet that I'm going to be putting the servers in. I'm going to do videos as I'm working on all this stuff. But today we're going to be doing a stopgap in between. I purchased a bunch of Lenovo M72es online recently. I really like the tiny Lenovos. I've found them to be pretty competent. They don't use a lot of power. They're quiet. And for the next few months, I'm going to be moving. I have three M72Es in particular. I'm going to be moving my primary domain controller, some virtual machines like a backup domain controller, a Windows Server 2016 machine that I use for backups and to run SpiceWorks. I'm going to have some Linux machines such as Pi-hole. I'm going to have my True Command system for my FreeNAS management. Quite a few things are going to be put on these machines. So I'm going to have three essentially identical machines. One is going to just be with Windows Server 2019. That's the one that we're going to be working on today. That's going to be my primary domain controller on hardware, pure hardware. And then the other two, I'm going to work with hypervisors. They're not very powerful machines, but I think with what we can do, we can probably run a few virtual machines on each one. I've been playing around with them a little bit, and I want to see what we can get out of a pretty low power, small physical space series of machines here. And we're going to be swapping really my entire network around because of the new house. I'm going to be doing some infrastructure work in the future because it's not wired for Ethernet and I don't like Wi-Fi. There's going to be a lot of that needs to be done. So I'm probably going to be busy for the next year or so on this. So it means a lot of my vintage machines are going to be kind of pushed to the side. I haven't done a video in a while on those anyway. I do actually have one that's in the works for my Pentium 233 machine, my favorite machine. I'm going to be revisiting that. I've done some upgrades. Well, not really upgrades, but some tweaking to it. So I want to show the current state of it and do a better job making a video. I'm working on getting a VGA capture system together, which I will do a video of as well. And then I can get some better quality stuff from my old vintage machines and stuff. So I just felt like this needed a little bit of an introduction. I apologize for the mess behind me. Still sorting things out. The lighting obviously isn't ideal in here either. I'm not even going to bother setting up studio lights in this room for now because I'm going to have a real studio soon enough. But anyway, here's my footage that I've edited together of moving my primary domain controller from an ATX case that was based on a Supermicro X10 series CPU with it was an E3-1260L Xeon, I think. So we're going to be changing that out with a much older first generation E3-1260L in the Lenovo, and we'll see how that goes. Alright, so this is the current state of my domain controller. It's Windows Server 2019. It has a Xeon E3-1260L, which is a very low power CPU. We'll look up the stats for that in a moment. Basically, this is in a full-size ATX case. Doesn't need to be. Eventually, due to the new house, I'm going to be getting a server rack and stuff. But for the moment, this machine is actually going to get moved to a Lenovo M72e Tiny that we're going to be upgrading really quick. I'm going to try to just pull the hard drive. I have a bare metal backup of this that I've already made, but I'm going to try to just pull the hard drive and pop it in the Lenovo and see if it'll boot up. It's all Intel chips and stuff, so we'll see. So as far as the CPU and motherboard that we're dealing with here, this is going to be used for a different machine, but you can see here it's a Haswell generation CPU, 2 cores, 4 threads, 1.1 gigahertz, can clock up to 1.5, so it's very low power, 13 watt TDP, and I think it's been fine for a domain controller. You don't need much for a domain controller unless you're in a giant corporate network. This is just a lab environment. Really don't need a lot. This is actually going to be moving over to my pfSense machine though, as part of the getting ready for rack mounting everything later this year. As far as the motherboard goes, I have this Supermicro X10 SLM-F. I really like Supermicro boards. I use them in most of my servers. My 3 FreeNAS machines all use the exact same. It's an X9 version of this board basically. But you can see here it's 4th generation Intel processors, DDR memory. It can have up to 32 gigs. We're just going to leave it with the 8 that it has, which is way more than pfSense could ever need. It has integrated graphics, which is standard for server boards because the Xeon processors don't usually come with those, although some do. The one that we're going to be using today does. But pretty box standard MATX server board here. So we're going to go shut this machine down. I have my backup domain controller online, so nothing on the network is going to be affected for DNS or anything like that. And we can see what happens when we switch this over. Alright, so I purchased 3 of these machines from a seller on eBay for $13 each. The shipping was another like $10 each, so about $25 each. They are very similar to the M73 that we looked at before. This is an M72e. You can see this one has a Celeron G470. It had 8 gigs of memory and it actually removed that stick of memory and put it in another machine. I've already labeled it here. We got USB sound on the front, and then on the back it's power, DisplayPort, USB, VGA, Ethernet, and another USB. So they're pretty simple machines. Go ahead and open this up. The layout is a little bit different in terms of how the cooling is handled. It's not as good of a design as on the M73s. They have that copper heat pipe that's probably a lot better. But other than that, it's essentially the same layout. We can pull this drive caddy out of the way here. We already have 4 gigs of memory in here, so this is just going to be a domain controller and do nothing else. So we can probably be fine with 8 gigs. 4 would have actually probably been enough, but I have the memory on hand anyway. What we're going to put in for a CPU is, this is a low power Xeon processor. I don't know whether I can get this to actually show up on the screen here, but this is a Xeon E3-1260L. We'll look at the stats on the Intel Arc in a moment here. So we're going to go ahead and pull the cooler off here, which is a pretty straightforward process. It's a pretty small cooler. Thermal limits are definitely going to be the primary issue here. Alright, and you see it's just a normal socketed CPU there. I'm going to clean it up a little bit before we try to pull it. The thermal paste looks like it might have been refreshed recently. That's actually still wet and pretty malleable looking. Yeah, look at that. Pretty easy. And I already sold one of these CPUs on eBay for $11. I paid $13 for the unit and sold the CPU for $11, so it's essentially free right now. Money ahead. Alright, so that is the Celeron G470. I've never used anything lower than a G530. I used to have those in my FreeNAS boxes, and they worked all right. I don't know how well it would work in a desktop environment. FreeNAS is not that hard on CPU, so you can get away with, if you're just running FreeNAS itself, you can get away with a pretty weak CPU. Alright, so we've got that done. I am being cheap here and just using some Cooler Master. I should actually wipe down the CPU here real quick, just because it's got fingerprints on it and stuff. But I'm not using any of the fancy stuff. This is only going to be in service hopefully for a few months. And I'll be swapping the CPU out again. I'll do a little discussion about the ultimate goal of what I'm doing here later. Alright, let's go ahead and tighten this bad boy down. Now, I know this already works. This is a 45 watt CPU, so it's definitely more than, I believe that's like 35, so it's bumping it up 10 watts. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but in a tiny little machine with limited cooling like this, you know, that's not nothing. Alright, so we've got the CPU there all settled away. I'm going to go ahead and edit real quick here because I'm just going to be installing this hard drive. I moved the image over to a laptop hard drive. I expect that will be fine. It's what I've been running the other one off of. These are actually identical spec systems at this point. Like I said, this is just a domain controller, so the amount of disk access that it's going to be doing is not that great. I'll probably actually I have another one of these that I'm going to be doing some experimenting, trying to make it into a mini virtualization machine just to run a couple of small Linux VMs that I want to run. And I'm going to put more memory in that one, but we'll see what we can get out of one of these things. I'm just kind of curious. Wouldn't use this as a domain controller in a production setting for sure, but I mean, it's sort of production. It is my home network, and if it goes down, nothing here will work, but it's nothing mission critical. Fairly obnoxious little connector there. And I don't actually have the proper screws. They're supposed to hold these drives in. It had most of the screws, but not quite all, so I'm just using regular PC CD-ROM style. They're the same thread pitch, so it works fine. Just got a different head. Not my fancy magnetic screwdriver, annoyingly though. I haven't found that since the move. Alright, so the machine's together. Just to show you, this is one I already prepared. I put the Xeon sticker on. We'll have to do that with this too. But this is my backup domain controller right now. It's been running for about a week. I did that just to kind of stress test it and see how it went, and it's been fine. The fan ramps up a little bit from time to time. Let me get these stickers off. But no biggie. So I'm going to get a monitor and an Ethernet cable hooked up to this thing, and a power of course, and see what happens with the image of the Supermicro X10 based machine that this was in. I'm hoping we won't have to reinstall from an image. It'd be kind of nice if we would just repair the drivers and be good to go, but we will see. The autofocus doesn't seem to really want to go. I apologize for the monitor shot. I actually have a project that I'm going to be working on to get a VGA capture machine up and running, but it hasn't happened yet. So let's see if we can fire this thing up and if it will boot for the first time here. I think it's like F1 or F2 or something to get into setup on this. That's booting Windows. Well, we'll let it boot Windows, I guess, and see what happens. There's our getting devices ready. I think this is going to work. My God, Windows has come a long way. Remember in Windows XP, things would just break all the time with drivers if you move too many components. But Windows 10 doesn't seem to care. And would you look at that, we have a Windows screen here. Probably get logged in here in a minute. Still updating stuff, but looks like it's going to work. I wonder if the activation still works. Server isn't as picky about things. That hard drive is making a little bit of noise, so I need to put that image on a different drive. I don't know if that's what the noise is. Alright, so it's up and running. I'm going to go log into a remote desktop session so we have a little bit better of a view of things here. Now, one of the things that I use DHCP reservations in order to assign addresses to computers on my network. I actually need to move this all over to the domain controller because it would work better. It's technically supposed to be that way, but I've been using pfSense for that for a long time. So we have to go into the DHCP server real quick and update the entry for this machine here. That way when it reboots, it will get the correct address it's expecting. So if we go back over to remote desktop here, we can see this is the information on the machine. Everything is up and running. I don't know if our Windows activation carried over. We'll see. Windows is activated, yep. So we have our Xeon E3-1260L at 2.4 gigahertz, and did I install the wrong modules in this? This has 16 gigabytes. I have other set of modules. I was supposed to install a different set. So yeah, we'll go ahead and change that out later because I only want it to have 8. I'll do that off screen though. Same idea. Let's go ahead and leave that remote desktop session up, but let's have a look at the L here. Now this is a unusual Xeon processor in that it actually has integrated graphics, Intel Graphics 2000. So it's part of the Sandy Bridge line of processors. So we probably could get a slightly newer one for this machine. Maybe could, I don't know if this could do the V2s or not. It probably can do the V2s, but I'm happy with this the way it is. 45 watts, and yeah, so these machines are going to, this also has Intel virtualization technology and such, which the Celeron obviously didn't. So it's going to be pretty well suited for doing a couple of light virtual machines. I don't do virtual machines on my domain controller because it's not best practices, but I'll probably use the third one and put the 16 gigs of RAM that's in this machine in the other one and move my true command and Pi-hole and a few other things over to that and see how that actually works. If these work out, I'll be using them for about 6 months or so until I can get the server room put together and get a rack and cases and all that stuff I need. There's a lot of money that's involved with that. But I might just build a tiny little rack out of wood and have a little server rack of Lenovo M72es. Just a tiny little cluster there. But I'm going to go ahead and reboot this thing, get its domain, its DHCP lease renewed. We're going to check out the firmware because the other one needed a firmware update. This one probably does. And actually, yeah, we'll check out some temperatures and stuff too. And actually, before we go ahead and do any of the restarting here, let's just get a couple utilities copied over here. Have a look. All right, so there's our Xeon processor information, cache, motherboard, Lenovo, that's all correct, Sandy Bridge, memory, need to get those out of there. Intel graphics, and I don't know, is there any point in bench testing this? I don't know, we'll do it. How long does this run? Oh, there it goes, it's doing stuff. Yeah, that's not good, I assume. I actually don't have any relative information to compare that to, but can I do that? Oh God, what have I done? Oh, it's not gonna let me go to that website on Internet Explorer here. Let's have a look, see how we're doing temperature wise. Now the CPU is probably kind of idle right now. I'm close to it. There hasn't been a ton going on here. I'm sure it's still reconfiguring itself to the new machine here, but yeah, with almost no CPU utilization right now. And see, that's what I'm talking about. The domain controller just running like 2.3 gigs of memory. 4 would be plenty for a domain controller if that's all it's doing in an environment like this. Let's see, fans. Those are higher than I would like, but not terrible. Let's see what happens. Actually, I want the task manager back here. Let's see what happens if we put a little bit of a load on it. Actually, it has a stress. Let's just put it on stress. Honestly, it's not right. It seems like it's pretty stable between 59 and like 63 or 64 degrees or so. It's high-ish, but not that bad. We're not hitting the TDP of the system, so I'm not sure we're getting maximum performance out of it, but that's not that bad. So I'm going to clean up drivers and all that stuff, because I'm sure it's a mess, I'm sure, right now. But all right, the drivers have been updated. I'm going to go ahead and check out the BIOS here. I should be able to just press F12, I believe, to actually get into them. But we will see. There's some updates going on in the background, so it'll probably take a moment for it to actually restart here. Alright, we are rebooting. Yeah, mash on F12 on these things. Alright, so yeah, this is a pretty old version of the BIOS. I think the newer one's from like 2016, so we'll update that for sure. What is it? List. System summary, yep. That all looks correct. Oh yeah, I gotta deal with that memory thing. Oh, CPU setup. Is virtualization enabled? No, let's do that. I probably won't use it, but we'll enable it. Audio, disable. I think everything else is probably good to go. Thermal mode, better acoustic performance, that's probably fine. And we'll call that good. Alright, so our current firmware version is from October 18th, 2013. The numbering system here doesn't necessarily make sense. I think it's version 61 versus version 45. So now I have done this previously on a machine in Windows, and it worked all right. There we go. So would we like to update the serial number? No. Would you like to update the machine and model number? No. So this is sort of terrifying doing over a remote desktop session in Windows. It's a weird way to update BIOS, but it seems to work fine. I did this on the other machine and it was fine. So go ahead and let this do its thing. Alright, so apparently the system's going to reboot now. Or not. It's still writing stuff, I guess. There it goes. Alright, so all the driver downloads and shenanigans are done. Everything is up and running. System seems stable. We got our BIOS updated to July 16th, 2018, so it's quite a bit, like almost 5 years newer. And I did have to go in there and tweak some settings and stuff, but it's fine now. Just got the final touches to do here. It's gonna be hard to do with one hand. There's that. And for now, you can sit with your brother on this desk. I'm going to be rearranging things, but these will probably be like this for about 6 months now as my domain controllers. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And the machine's been up and running for about, 2 weeks now. It's been completely reliable. I haven't had a single issue with it. The power consumption hasn't caused any issues. I actually should get a meter on that. Just so, I think I'll do that with the next machine just so we can see how much power it actually draws. But with the Xeon in there, it's been perfectly fine. It hasn't overheated. It's even been hot in here a few days, and it hasn't been a problem. So I think going forward, this is probably going to be the format I do these videos for this computer channel here. I'll do a little introduction and talk to you about what I'm doing, try to organize it a little bit more, and I will definitely be doing some videos on some of the projects, like when I actually start working on the server room. I don't know how much of that people are interested in seeing because it's going to be a lot of construction work and stuff. It doesn't really relate to technology, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So please, as always, leave a comment below, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.